Welcome to the Property Mindset Podcast, where I'm Emma Howitt, a mentor, investor, and your guide to building wealth, freedom, and personal transformation through property. Property is not just about bricks and mortar. It's about building the life you truly desire. In this space, we don't just talk about strategy. We really deep dive into mindset. And that's something that I found is often missing in every other industry, but has been a real game changer in the professional property circle. So I'm really thrilled to have Richard Leonard here with us today. Hey, Richard, how are you?
Hi, Emma.
Fantastic. So Richard has been in property for over 30 years, and he owns an HMO portfolio worth 4.2 million. He's got a very strong background in construction, project management, and is also a fellow author and has written a book called HMO Renovation and Refurbishment Success. He's also raised over £1.8 million in investor funds and has completed 14 successful HMO projects. So let's turn dreams into actions and actions into success. Jumping straight in, Richard, from buying derelict houses on credit cards in the 1980s to running a letting agency managing 160 plus tenancies, what's the most pivotal decision that propelled you from ordinary investor to HMO expert?
Good question, Emma. Yeah, I guess, property for me for the early part was pretty much a side hustle. And it was only when one of my children became ill and I had to make some sort of tough decisions. I had to spend, months and months in Great Ormond Street with him, and then a trip over to America for proton treatment. And I didn't know what to do. So I sat down with my accountant and said, look, I can't work anymore. I can't do my day job. And he said, well, don't worry. Let's move the financial furniture around. And the rest was history. I started living off the proceeds of my property portfolio, and did what I needed to do, and then came back, sort of like tenfold, and started buying property like it was going out of fashion. That became my normal job. So that was pivotal. That was the moment.
Wow, that is, and that shows there's always something behind every journey, isn't there? Every story, and there's a big why. And
Yes.
that's clearly, a huge why for you. Do you have any, family as well? Do you have any other whys that, really gets you out of bed of a morning?
I think there's two. Obviously, my family. That's my big why. I do it for them, but I also do it for myself. I get a great deal of satisfaction in deciding what I do, being, if you like, my own captain of my own ship, whether it be businesses or running my properties. I like the autonomy that property and property investing has brought to me. Those are so family and actually satisfying myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think it is important that sometimes people can forget about themselves. I certainly, as a mum, I can realize, and I have done over the years, of putting yourself last. But actually, it's whenever it comes down to it, everything we do is to do with us. There is a lot of selfishness, and that's great. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, I was actually asked. Someone actually asked me that, because I'm someone who gives a lot, and someone actually asked me, and they said, "But what do you actually want?" This was years ago, and I really struggled with that question. What do you want? Everything I gave them up to that point said for other people, but when I actually worked out what it was that I actually wanted, well, boy, and it was a big answer, but that was it. Actually, to build my property portfolio and look after my family with what it brought.
I love that. So let's sort of take us back. So obviously you had this, huge, very personal, emotional crater come and hit you, which sort of propelled you into this journey. And I have to say, I should think everyone's going to be writing comments. Can we have the number of your accountant, please? Because he just sounds fantastic. They seem to be a bit more staid and boring, the ones I talk to. But no, that was amazing. So, you know, I know you've made it seem very simple, but it wasn't necessarily simple. So how did you go from having that conversation with the accountant, and give us a bit of a sort of a journey of how you got sort of started?
Yeah, fine. I mean, yeah, we worked it all out, and I got my my running costs, if you like, my personal mortgage and all my bills down to the lowest I possibly could, and that gave me a few £1,000s a month. And then if you like, we bought a few more properties. I was able to liberate cash from our residents and also remortgage the portfolio that we actually had. It gave us about £2,000 or £3,000, and with that, I guess we started buying more and more HMOs. And there was one point when I had a conversation with my wife saying, "Are you okay with this?" And she said, "Look, Rich, I believe in you, so crack on." And yeah, I bought one, I bought two, I bought three, I bought four. But it did seem like every Friday afternoon there was an exchange or a completion on a property. And pretty much within about a year, and this was in between what was going on medically with my son. I think we'd increased by about 7 HMOs, and that was bringing in, I guess anywhere from about 5,000 to 7,000 pound net a month, which was amazing. So all of a sudden I got from sort of living like a church mouse, doing all the things I needed to do, and then really stuck my neck out in terms of buying. And these were 3 and 4 bedroom properties to be converted. So I also was running a multitude of conversions on those properties. And working with HMO officers and builders and building control. I didn't know whether I was coming or going, but I got through it. I don't know how I did it, and all of a sudden there was this sort of payday, which was the extra income, which was phenomenal. And I really didn't look back from that point of view. It was just a very, very hectic, busy time.
Amazing. So let's again step back a little bit. So why HMOs? What sort of drove you to that? Because that was a while ago as well, wasn't it? So you kind of invented what everyone else is teaching now.
No, it was a fellow called. It was in 2010. This guy called Eric Pickles.
Yeah.
And he was in, I think, the Conservative government, and he realised quite cleverly that there was this big gap in the market for the sort of 20 to 30 somethings, and there was no way that they were going to get council flats or were going to be able to afford mortgages or whatever. So he came up with the idea of being able to convert a standard 3-4 bedroom property, a C3 class, to a C4. He said you could do that with inside permitted development. So that was 2010, and I guess I really got going about 2012. I had a couple of student lets. I had one in Surrey, in Egham, near the Royal Holloway.
Yep.
And it sort of drove me nuts, really, because you only got paid during term time. So you had your cash flow was going up and down. And those students, and I like students, I was a student myself once, but I don't know, they just, there was just general apathy in the way that they sort of behaved. Anyway, that's fine. I haven't got to hang out with students, really, honestly. But I'd taken what I'd seen in a sort of 5-person student lets, and I thought, well, how does that apply if you do it as a HMO? And I had no one to guide me. It was just have a go. So I bought a 4-bedroom house and I converted it to a 6-bedroom HMO. Took it to the very high end, so professional tenants. Looked fantastic. It was like a Premier Inn hotel plus, and all of a sudden it was fully tenanted. I thought fantastic. So I guess it really was, the seed was actually born from these student lets. I thought, well, and then remembering back to my childhood watching, Rising Damp and Rigsby and Bed Sits and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, there's some similarities here. But a professional HMO, and that's where I said it. And I've always looked for the very highest end, because you get the highest rents, and the tenants you have on board look after your property. They cause you very little trouble, and it works.
Well, that's absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, they are almost frightened by having so many more tenants. One property, one tenant. One property, six tenants, six times the problem. But exactly as you've spoken about, you've really talked about the fact that you're offering high end, something really special, and that's really worked for you. So you talked about adding 7 in a year, which is pretty tremendous. Now, not everyone's done that. And I know you obviously had the emotional, personal stuff that was going on with your son as well. What kind of mindset were you in at that? Was it kind of fear propelling you? Was it, how did you get through that to achieve such a lot in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I mean, I think there was fear, but there was also, come on, let's get on with this. And it was, I think the fear for me was, and it felt, I can describe it, I've described it before, it felt like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. It was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I think I believe in myself. Everyone else does. So let's just do it. I've worked all the numbers out. Let's just go. Let's be courageous. Let's take action. So off I went. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, on a practical sense, how do I do this? So I started off with one contractor, and luckily we had this mind melt going on. He understood exactly what I wanted to achieve. We spent a long time working with each other and actually saying, well, we need to, this particular room here, we're going to take the cloakroom, turn that into an ensuite. This room here, which is the dining room, we're going to put an ensuite in there, and we're going to, we're going to change it round. And it got into a pattern. I'd say, Ricky, we've got another one coming up. Yeah, right, okay. I can start that in 4 weeks. Just finishing this one off, and it would just flick flack. It was great. I mean, once we got into a role, luckily they were all within 20 miles of each other. The HMO officer that I got really friendly with, he was basically saying, well, I'll come and see you at this point, Rich. I'll come and do this. Are you happy with that? Yeah. And it was all about relationships. My contractor, the HMO officer, and then we got to a point, it was like, we've got these properties, we've converted them all, and I'm running backwards and forwards trying to meet tenants and move them in, and that really wasn't my gig. And then Kath, my wife, said, well, how about we're doing this anyway, why don't we just create our own letting agency? And I'd already had experience back in the 80s of building and running Lenwell, which was my first letting agency, which we sold on to Leaders many years ago. But I had the experience, but I didn't really want to do it, if I'm honest. So we built the letting agency, Stevenage Lettings, and the rest is history. And they were finding me good tenants and putting the people into the properties. And but there was a fear, but also a practical sense of urgency as well. I bought these properties, I better get them converted, I better get some tenants in there. But it all worked. Possibly my background as a project manager helped, I don't know. There were days when I sort of closed my eyes and just run at the wall, but it happened, it got there, and I'm very glad it did.
Yeah. So it sounds like, was it almost kind of like a rinse and repeat? Were you
Yes.
choosing very similar properties? Then obviously amazing that you found a great contractor who understood you, who was happy to keep moving through and go like that. And obviously your experience of being a project manager, I mean, gosh, that is just an absolute wonderful skills to be able to impart in it. So could you kind of talk through, perhaps, one of the deals that you really enjoyed, or one that you perhaps had the most learning from, so kind of we can sort of understand
Yeah.
it a bit more?
Okay. Yeah. I think it was yeah, one of my first I bought. So this was in Stevenage, and it's about an area called Great Ashby,
Mm.
and this property came on the market. It was an ideal conversion. I think it was I think it's 4 bedroom, and it would convert to a 6. I think I picked it up for about 200,000, just over £200,000. And the conversion costs were about 35,000. Yeah, it was wonderful, and that's where I really learned my trade. I was buying things like headboards from eBay, to for the bedrooms. I was making friends with mattress men. I know that most of the directors now are mattress men are my friends because I buy so many beds and mattresses. It's fantastic. But this is where I really cut my teeth on the very first professional HMO, and I really wanted it to ping. And I really didn't know. I had no one to guide me, which is, apart from obviously the amenity standards, the fire standards locally, my HMO officer at that point was fantastic. Don't ever underestimate these people. They can be so helpful. So yeah, bought it, worked out a scheme, got some drawings done. It was all done under permitted development, which was great. Yeah, I mean, it all just came together. Luckily, this property already had fire doors, already had mega flow. And for those who don't know what mega flow is, it's a great big tank of hot water that talks to the boiler all day long and provides you with constant hot water. So your tenants don't get soap in their eyes when they're all trying to shower and they run out of water. Doesn't happen in one of my properties. They've already got fire systems, like linked fire systems. So that just required a bit of adaptation. It was when I look back on it now, it was a fairly easy conversion. Whereas you can get HMO conversions which actually go back to brick, where you're absolutely, completely and utterly ripping the place apart, and then putting it back together again. So these were fairly simple adaptations, conversions, whatever you want to call it. So that was a big success.
And were they
No,
all en suite, or?
yeah, all en suite. So yeah, we were putting basically 5 en suites, and then one of the rooms would have the master bathroom. So we'd have the master bathroom as a fallback if we ever had a problem with one of the ensuite rooms. We could say just share with Fred, which always worked. So that was the big success.
Mm.
And then one of the things that really tripped me up was I overstretched myself financially. I was like, bought the property, had all the contractors ready, and I had no money to pay for the refurb. And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And I thought, well, I don't really want to borrow anything. And then I thought, well, I've got my credit cards here, so I'll put it all on my credit cards. So it's about 30 or 40 grand on my credit cards. Biggest mistake I ever made. The interest I was being charged was ridiculous. Anyway, I sorted it out fairly quickly, realizing what mistake I'd made. But yeah, that was I really stubbed my toe on that. And actually, because I did that, yes, I got it done. But whatever, it just had an impact on the timescales, and it was 4 weeks late. So I don't recommend paying for a refurb on your credit cards. I got away with it.
But equally, it shows a certain amount of resourcefulness as
Oh,
well.
You've got to spin on your heels. Honestly, that's what property investing is all about. I always think it's like, playing rugby, what's coming at you? How am I going to deal with that? How am I going to deal with this? That for me is been my whole journey all the way through. Anyone who says, oh, you could just get into property investing, it's all play safe, forget it. It's not. You know that. I know that. We've got the t-shirts, we've got the scar tissue. That's the way property investing is.
Absolutely. So I realised I haven't even mentioned how we know each other. So Richard and I both mentor. Well, Richard still does mentor for Touchstone. I mentored for them for 3 years, and so yeah, that's where our paths have met. But interestingly, on your mentorship side, I know, and both of us know that we see a lot of shiny penny syndrome. So,
Oh yeah.
oh, there's this, oh, I could do that, oh, I could do that, oh, I could do that. Well, you have been a stalwart in HMOs. What has enabled you to just be so focused and stick to that?
I guess part of it is, we've sort of everything we've done since sort of 2012 has really always been focused on HMOs. It works. It's, we've got a HMO property sourcing business where we cover Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, and all that. That's HMO focused. We're a specialist. Our letting agency is a HMO specialist. And we take the HMOs on for other landlords. Everything we do is sort of focused. I most probably should get sort of something on the end of my bed saying HMO sleeps here. It's just, that's what, yeah. I understand it. I am a specialist. You could ask me pretty much most questions. I'm not being big-headed here, and I would know how to answer it. When you start getting into serviced accommodation and maybe commercial, hey, I've got an L plate on my back. I just don't know. It's like, so, I guess I've got to the grey haired bit in my life, and I don't really want to do anything else.
I love it. I love it. But it does take a certain element of persistence, and there must have been times, especially perhaps early on, where we're always going to have, and I say it every week, but we always are hit with problems.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's business, property, we always get them, and you have to expect them. So, what has enabled you to keep going and stick to that one path? Because that is also, you hear a lot of talk about diversification and all of those kind of things. So, what has enabled you to just keep? I always imagine like a stream, and there's lots of big boulders, and you've just kept going, whereas others will go off on many tributaries out on the side.
Doing a slalom, a little bit of a slalom.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess, am I someone who's really focused? I guess I am. I won't ever give up, and I'll always take action. So I guess it's a character thing, maybe. I don't know. I will, I mean, I've got to say, my biggest support and advocate is my wife, Catherine, and she runs the letting agency, and we've been together for 30 odd years, so we rely on each other, and she's my sounding board. So I think I attribute an awful lot of what do you think, and we always do the right thing. But yeah, I have to make decisions almost all the time, so I just try and draw on that experience and just think what's the right thing to do. And so far, touch wood, it seems to have worked.
I love it. And so, keeping on that consistency, do you still just do the smaller HMOs? Have you kind of grown into the bigger ones?
Yeah, there's a good story here. So I guess about 5 years ago, one of my friends came to me and said, Rich, really exciting. I found a care home down in Kent, and it's got 22 rooms. I went, fantastic. And it's an old care home, and the Care Quality Commission have just pulled its ticket, so it's worth nothing now as a care home. Are you interested in converting to a HMO? I went, yeah, of course I am. And we got, I went and looked at it. Brilliant, lovely big car park. All the rooms had all the, obviously all the fire stuff there. Lovely big kitchen. Rooms weren't too bad, just needed quite a bit of renovation. And we've got a syndicate of investors together, and we spent about 4 months. We got contractors. We went through a tender process. We were ready to go, and this thing was, even the local council said this is brilliant, and we decided we were going to do it half HMO, half SAs, because it was right near Dungeness Power Station, and the workers
near me.
Yeah. And I think, was it Romsey or Romney?
Romney. Oh, Romney,
yeah.
Or New Romney?
Yeah, it was just, you went over a bridge and it was on a little island. Yeah, beautiful. And the guy was selling it, possibly a little bit dodgy, didn't know. So we got all set up. We spent hours on it, put this plan together. Everyone was ready to go. We started to just get the last, pennies together and get all the contracts signed and, basically buy it. And I think it was a couple of days before the actual exchange. Guy said, "No, I'm selling it to my friend. I told him what you're doing, and he's going to do that. So thanks ever so much." And yeah, we were all walking with our heads hanging low. But it just shows you that could have been one of the biggest HMOs. I'm constantly looking for super HMOs, and I've watched some people, create some great HMOs. I think for me, if I got to be honest, a six-bedroom HMO is nice. It balances the tenants. Single kitchen. When you start getting up into the big HMOs, I think you run the risk of, almost creating a hotel. A sort of there's a lot of people there. There's a lot going on. I think when it's just up to six, that's not too bad. But when you start getting into these sort of things, you almost need a caretaker on site. And for the project we were going to do down in Kent, it had a third floor, and we were actually going to put, a caretaker in to turn around the SAs and also look after the HMO because there was just too many people. It just seemed like a sensible thing to do.
Yeah. It's almost like you want to put them into multiple HMOs within the HMO.
You got it, like pods, yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise I can see, that would just be too much. I mean, I've got a 9-bed HMO, and I think you wouldn't, I don't know, you wouldn't that many more in there, but there we go.
Yeah. I guess there's a point where you think, well, where's the balance in this? Obviously, 6-bedroom, you got 6 tenants. From a financial point of view, you've got a nice spread of risk there. And as you go up, 7, 8, 9, 10, even better. So that's why I like HMOs, because you've got that, you de-risk your investment. If one of your tenants stop paying, the others are going to keep on, lifting it. So, if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And so with regards to the tenant, what is your approach? I mean, obviously you've got your letting agent, etc., but what's always been your approach as far as managing voids, the maintenance, the tenants, especially across your sort of portfolio? Is there anything sort of specific systems or tools that you swear by?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so we've now built ourselves a 24/7 call center.
Wow.
It's not as grand as it sounds. It's a 24-hour company taking our calls, and then they have like a call script or a triage. If it's an emergency, it goes down that way. If it's non-emergency maintenance, then it goes down that way. If it's an emergency, then we've got a panel of electricians, plumbers, locksmiths. Because the most calls we get are people being locked out. They go out for the evening, get a little bit tiddly and lose their key, and you don't want to see them sitting on the street, but so that's what we do. We get them in. Things like electricity tripping. Again, you've got to respond really quickly to that, and if there's any floods or a fire, then that is an emergency. So we resolve that quite easily and quite quickly. So call center. Absolutely. You can't manage a HMO laying on the beach. You've got to be there. You've got to be present. The other things is really our referencing. We take an awful lot of our tenants from the local industry, especially some of the fintech industries, in Stevenage, in Cambridge, in Milton Keynes. The big employers, come to us now almost as first choice because of our standards. So that's another big learning, that we now take most of the graduates, most of the interns that come in, even Lister Hospital. We talk directly to their HR department, and if we can, we've got houses full of doctors and nurses. You could almost make a comedy of it. It's that's the engineer's house, and they're all working down at aerospace or whatever. It's really funny how they all cluster together. And one of the other things we do is we incentivize our existing tenants to tell their friends at work, and they get 50 quid if they refer someone who becomes one of our tenants. And it's a great way of marketing. So, that's how we get these houses, which are all doctors and nurses or engineers or whatever they be. We've even got one that's full of rocket scientists, because that's what they make in Stevenage. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's fascinating. But yeah, that's some of the big learnings. And also, we've got call scripts now as to how we filter some of our tenants as they call in and say we'd like it. We use some very, very subtle wordplay to actually determine, are they working, are they suitable for us. We're actually interviewing them before they've even seen the property. So we've learned this over a good amount of time. Yeah, that's really how we sort of filter, look after our tenants, look after our properties, and actually decide whether the tenants actually should be in our properties.
And that's an absolute mindset thing as well, isn't it? Where rather than, because you could be in the mindset, oh, I'm desperate to fill up my property, and I know I've got to be careful, and I am, but whereas you're literally saying, I'm providing such a great quality product. I'm really proud of it. I've done everything in place. I've also done my due diligence beforehand to know that there's a demand. You've got some, you've already mentioned some incredible local industries that are going in there, but you have therefore coming at it from a different mindset, which is actually these people, I want to be really selective who I'm bringing in here. So how, you must get some, bad eggs potentially. And also we've got the whole renters' rights bill
Yes.
coming through, and there's a lot of fear around that. And I do hear a lot of people, not wanting to go into sort of buy-to-lets or HMO. They're sort of very fearful, and there's been a big push into serviced accommodation. What's your kind of view around, potentially having a bad egg?
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, we do every now and again. I think certainly in the last 5 or 6 years, we've only ever had one Section 21. This guy just didn't want to pay, and he didn't want to pay his rent. We have a zero tolerance for non-payment of rent. So within 24 hours of you being late, you'll get a phone call. One of the team will make contact with you, find out if there's any difficulties. Within about 2 or 3 days, there'll actually be a welfare check. So one of the team will actually go and actually meet with the tenant to actually understand what's going on. And obviously, there could be a genuine reason, but it's the push is really, well, come on, let's get this sorted out, and let's get it sorted out quick. From there, it will escalate pretty fast, and the last thing we want to do is take any form of legal action, because it costs money and it takes time, and the courts are full up. So we don't want to go down that route, but we've actually got to be firm and fair if this happens. We normally work something out, but as I say, in 7 years, I think maybe one Section 21, we've tended to use our skill sets to be able to untangle and diffuse situations like that. You also mentioned about voids. Luckily at this point in time, voids are almost unheard of. If you go back maybe 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, you every now and again you'd have an empty room. Now we've got waiting lists. We haven't got any rooms available. We haven't now for the last 6 weeks. We're desperate for more property, new landlords to come on board. The demand just outstrips our availability. So that's a good thing. I hope that lasts forever. You also mentioned renters reform. So yeah, I've done quite a bit of study on this, and from a HMO point of view, it's not really going to bother us too much. Obviously Section 21 being taken out. You can fall back onto Section 8, but there you've got to obviously evidence a breach of the tenancy agreement. Okay. They're talking about, putting landlords on a national register. Well, as HMO landlords, we're already on a HMO register. So, It's not a problem. They're talking about not taking rents for, long periods of time. So taking a year's tenancy, and paying for it up front. Well, that's a bit like us. When tenancies roll onto periodic, we're just going month to month anyway, so it really doesn't bother us. So from a HMO point of view, I don't see anything in what they're currently, and remember, they're just talking about it. It seems to have bounced along the road a little bit, this Reform Act. So we really don't know what's going to happen. They said, oh, it's going to be by the end of the year. Well, we're June now, and there's not much left of the year. Well, there's still half of the year left, but it doesn't seem to have gone anywhere. So I'm not sure quite what it's going to look like. But yeah, I don't like the fact that it pushes uncertainty into the marketplace. For me, as a property investor and as a HMO landlord, I'm not really that fussed because we're doing all the right things anyway. It's just most probably a little bit of extra bureaucracy on top. Do you agree, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that I don't get worried about anything until it's actually happening.
Yes.
Because, people are so excited about it and things have completely changed from what it started out as, and
Yes.
so I'm just a bit of the view of, keeping an ear out to it. I think it's really important to at least follow a little bit, but I'm not going to take it too seriously. And I don't
Yeah.
worry
See,
about
see,
it.
see what actually comes into law.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
might be very different.
exactly. And then there's always a solution, and there's far more cleverer people than I who'll come up
Yeah,
with the
of
solution, and
course.
I'll just do whatever they're doing, and that'll be great. I'm all about copying what other people are doing well. It's much better. So yeah. So talking about this, is there anything specific? So there's always these new buzzwords, isn't there? Oh, co-living and all these different ways of doing things. But what do you do? I mean, obviously, generally the kind of tenants that you've been talking about, graduates, they're quite young, they haven't afford to buy their own places, they are not necessarily with partners yet, so they are naturally not going to be staying with you for years and years and years. But are there things that you put in place to really encourage a bit of longevity with your current tenants?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to. Okay, that's a really good question again. We tend to, or the team tend to try and blend the tenancies. You can't mix, a professional set of tenants with what I'd call a blue collar set of tenants. So, engineers and warehouse staff just doesn't
Mm.
work. People are on shifts, so we try and blend the tenants that are actually in that property. We also try and get the tenants to meet a new tenant when they come in. Doesn't always help. Some properties are better than others. I mean, a great example, a couple of years ago, I went in to do an inspection, and there was a new tenant moving in, and one of the other tenants had put a little note, welcome to whatever the property number was, and he put a can of beer on it. I'll see you tonight. And I thought that was really sweet.
Amazing, yeah.
Obviously looking for a friend. There is a social thing that happens in these properties.
Yeah.
I always joke that, you get somewhere to live and you only pay one amount, for all everything, roof over your head, and all your utilities and your council tax and your broadband. But you can also have a social life as well. So, that's wonderful. If you don't want to and you're a bit of an introvert, you can stay in your room all the time. But you've got a communal space, and you get to like each other. I mean, one of our houses, we had one guy who's a bit of a party animal, and took them all out one weekend to party up in London, and someone went missing.
Oh,
He went missing actually. Bit sad.
oh.
But the other tenants were phoning me up. I was like, Dad. I said, what are you phoning me up for? Well, he hasn't come back. And I was like, what can I do? I said, wait until like Sunday night, and if he hasn't turned up, we'll get in touch with the police. And we had to do it. This guy had actually fallen over, banged his head, and got taken to hospital.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
we found him in St Thomas's. So yeah, sometimes I get dragged in as sort of social worker as well. But it's all fun. Yeah.
Oh. So with your letting agent. So obviously it sounded like it came about through need of having, managing a lot yourself, and obviously needing to take care of not having too many jobs at once.
Yeah.
But you've obviously you manage over 160 tenancies now, is that correct?
It's more, it's around the 300 mark. It's just
300, double
yeah,
that. My gosh.
They're not all ours, because what
Yeah.
happened over the years with people coming along saying, Rich, could you look after our property? And I was like, yes, well, it meets the standard. And we won't take on anyone's HMO because, as you can imagine,
Variety.
there's a bit of variety. Oh, that's kind. So we've taken a lot on, and a lot of the investor finance we've raised. We've done that, and we've done the trick of one for you, one for me. So we've converted 2 HMOs. One goes to the investor, and one stays with us. So that's been quite good. And I have learned, I've learned, I think it was when I first met you, someone said to me, Rich, do you know about capital allowances?
Oh.
And I went, what's that? That was Steve, and I said, I don't know about that. He told me, and I saved about 90,000 off my tax bill for that year. It was just, you keep on learning as a property investor. I'm sure there's still loads I don't know, but it's a wonderful journey. It really is. I wouldn't do anything else.
You have made it sound so simple, but I've got to dig a little bit further. Yeah, we've just got like 300 tenancies, and we just, that is huge.
Mm.
Do you think I'm just sort of guesstimating, but do you think it's because, you're great at relationships, or you're great at, what is it that has helped you overcome those challenges of scaling a business?
I think I'm just dogged. I think I've got nothing better to do. I sort of hang on in there, and it's like,
the persistence, really, is it kind of real persistence?
Real persistence, and I do like people, if that helps. My mum still tells me, Rich, get a proper job like your brother,
What's he do?
He's a project manager, and it's funny how 2 sons become, well, one was a project manager, and now he's the HMO investor. But I wouldn't do anything else. I love it so much. Yes, I am a good communicator. Yes, I do like people. I've got a great team around me, but that's grown over time. There's tricky days, like any business, like any job. But I think I have more smiles on my face than I do frowns. So yeah, why not?
And I think that says everything, doesn't it, as well? When you look at who you're surrounded by, who wants to work with you, let's be fair, who wants to work with some misery? And it's my huge thing to smile at everyone. And
have you heard rumours? Have you heard rumours, Emma? They've been writing in, have they?
But it's hilarious because my daughter's always like, Mummy, why are you smiling at everyone? I'm like, because I think it's really important. You never know when that smile has changed somebody's life. Somebody's having a terrible day, and that smile has changed somebody's life. So I think, you are just that absolute example. You really play it down. But there's a lot to be said for, working with great people who just walk the walk, talk the talk, and keep going with it. So yeah, I really think it's amazing. I've got one more question that's really sort of biting at me. Is with HMO investing, do you think there's kind of like one thing that just keeps cropping up time and time again that people tend to miss, but you sort of are able to mitigate that?
Yeah, you sort of said it a couple of times. Well, at the beginning and in the middle as well. I've made it sound so easy. I think it is easy, and it is once you got it into a sort of painted by numbers, cookie cutter, do it and rinse and repeat. Yeah, fine. I think a lot of people are scared off by, oh, it's too difficult. There's too many moving parts. There's too much compliance. There's too much governance, and too many rules and regulations. I won't get involved in that. It's scary. It's not. It really isn't. It is a really straightforward process. The likes of you, the likes of me, you can teach people it. You can hold their hand if they really need that. But it isn't really that scary. You can become a very successful HMO investor or HMO landlord if you want. If you want to do what I've done, which is be an investor and then build a letting agency, conversion company off the back of it. If you just want to, you can easily do it. It's teachable, it's learnable, it's repeatable. So don't be scared. You can do it.
Yeah, it's interesting that easy, because there's nothing difficult. I mean, a lot of it is perhaps picking up the telephone, writing an email, filling out you were just talking about a mortgage application form.
Yeah.
Like every part of it, it's not, it's not hurting you, it's not difficult,
No.
but the whole lot together can seem overwhelming, difficult, challenging, and also things are easy to do, but equally they're easy therefore not to do as well.
Yeah, if you need to be sort of fairly pragmatic, systemized, but you know, it's not anything really challenging. It's just knowing the right sequence, doing the right things at the right time, um, understanding your market, understanding your tenants. If you build what a tenant wants, give them what they want, they will keep coming. And that's what we found over the years. It's actually asking them, are you happy? Yeah, we're happy. This is great. How about TV in the communal space? Yeah, fine. Would you like Sky? No, it's all right. No, we'll just have one of those Fire Sticks or little things. You know, you've got a washer dryer there. Do you like a tumble dryer and a washer? Yeah, yeah, great. And we've finessed that. That just comes with time and experience. But actually getting out there and building yourself a good HMO portfolio that's going to provide you and your family with great cash flow, month on month and month in, it's not difficult. It really isn't difficult.
Well, everyone's gonna, yeah. I think my advice would be get somebody like Richard to help you. That's what you need, and that really gets it on the way. Because I think
I'm here if you want me.
yeah, exactly. And if anyone, that surround, whether it's your networking group or having mentorship or training, certainly for me and everything I've done, I've required that training. You sound more like these kind of natural mothers. I remember looking at them and thinking, how on earth do they do it? I was literally each day I had a child looking at page 54. What have I got to do today?
Yeah.
Just
I think my child caring career is relatively limited, Emma. But I think my HMO career, yeah, I could definitely help there.
I love it. So what then inspired you to write your book? So I think I'm right in saying HMO renovation and refurbishment success.
Yeah. Well,
tell us about that. How did that come about?
It was one of my friends, a guy called Nick Fox, who's got hundreds of properties in Milton Keynes, and he used to come over and see what I was doing, and he said, "Rich, you're really good at this HMO thing." And I said, "Yeah, Nick." He said, "I've written quite a few." He said, "I've written quite a few books." He said, "How about you and me write a HMO book?" And I went, "Sounds interesting." So tell you what, I'll give you my ghostwriter. You work with her, and you give her all all the photographs, and we've got a book. And that's what I did, and that's really what. But it was all tongue in cheek. It was all about creating a practical guide for someone wanting to actually understand, how it all goes. It's not like a Haynes manual, if you remember Haynes manual in the day. It was like, how to strip your car down and put it back together again. That's what the HMO renovation and refurbishment success was all about. It was the layman's practical guide, and that, I just wanted to help people. And I'm doing another one at the moment called HMO Expert, which is just on the slips. So I'm hoping that by the end of the year that'll be published as well. Fantastic. And that's about my journey and how you can become a successful HMO investor.
And are you kind of writing it similarly to the other one, or are you writing it on your own? How are you doing that one?
No, again, I've got a friend, and she's a ghostwriter that helped me with the last book.
Mm.
So she's gonna dip in and help with this one. So we're sort of at almost final manuscript level at the moment, but it's lots of tweaks. Um, yeah, I can't sit there all day long doing that. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of properties to look after, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. I know with my first book, I it was between 5 and 7 that I would do a lot of my writing.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of when I squeezed it in. But yeah, well, I'm going to try and beat you because I've got my second book this year as well.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we'll have to drive a little library lorry around everywhere, giving our books out.
Hilarious. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, brilliant. So, what's kind of your next project? Is there something sort of big in the pipeline? Is it just growth for you? Is it new areas? Where are we looking for Richard Leonard going
Oh,
forward?
that's the toughest question you've asked ever. Thanks. Okay, nothing related to HMO. So we're getting to that point where our kids are all gone now or going,
Hmm.
and hopefully they don't. Oh, no, I won't say that. So we're looking at trying to get a place in Sicily, and
Oh, beautiful.
on Saturday we go down to Sicily for the whole of July, to stay there and actually look around for a property to buy. We've been there many, many times now, and it's just our perfect place. And we want to try a bit of sort of like 6 months there, 6 months here. So that's sort of in our sort of personal life. That's what we're trying to achieve. And we realise we can actually work in Sicily and the UK equally. Technology's there now to do that, with Elon Musk's Starlink,
Darling.
which I'm actually talking to you on now.
Oh.
Yeah, so you're getting 100 megabits off that. So we're going to take that with us to see if it works in Sicily. I've been told it will. So that's that, and then we set a plan out, for about the last 5 years, which is to get a lot more properties. Yeah, we've got a number of targets, and what we're going to do when we're in Sicily is spend some time actually reworking our plan. I'd like to try a couple of rent to rent HMOs, whereby we actually lease HMOs from existing landlords, investors who don't actually want to be active anymore. There's a lot of 70 somethings that are just saying, I just can't be bothered. New legislation, Rich, you take it. So I'm trying to work on a plan to find some of those. I'm going to increase the number of SA properties that I've actually got, just as a sort of little hedge. We've got the infrastructure now to be able to turn properties round and actually manage those. So yeah, so there's some expansion in the portfolio. There's some changes to the way we actually live our lives, which I'm really glad we can do now, and that's all through
Amazing.
property. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's future for us really. Watch this space.
Brilliant, brilliant. Oh, well, I'm definitely going to be knocking on the door when you're in Sicily.
Oh,
Hello. Oh, I
Emma,
was just
you're
passing.
welcome. You're welcome.
Just
I mean, look, if you got your passport and you get an overnight bag, you can pop down and see us.
amazing. I love that. So, are you kind of driven by a big overarching goal, or is it kind of work in progress? How do you kind of work with that? This is, yeah.
I think we've got a number of goals, whether that's the size of our portfolio or, I don't want it to get too big because I think then it's going to become cumbersome. The size of the letting agency, we're getting to a point now where, we're having to bring in, a couple of new staff every 6 months because we're growing so fast. I think on the sourcing side, we're finding about 8 to 10 deals every month now.
Wow.
And that has its wear and tear on me because I have to go out and find deals. I have to go and see them. I won't sell anything or I won't source anything that I haven't actually touched or run the numbers on. A bit like yourself, you get that sort of professional pride. So again, I don't want that to get much bigger. The portfolio is of a size now where I don't need to fiddle with it if I don't want to. But we set this 5 year plan to, to increase to a certain size. I'd like to see that out. Yeah. Uh, and I don't want to get bored, Emma. You know, people say, let's say the grey hair. They say, when are you going to retire? I'm never going to retire. I love what I do. Whether it's teaching people, whether it's buying more properties, doing a conversion, lecturing, whatever it be, I don't care. I just love my subjects. I love what I do, and I don't want to stop doing that.
And I just want to touch on, because I know we're running out of time now, but I think, some people kind of poo-poo sourcing, and they might be like, oh, I'm going to do it all myself. And I'm just a huge advocate of using sources, especially if you don't have the time, you haven't necessarily got the knowledge. And I always pay myself for finding my own deal. Like I'll pay myself. So I always know that, let's say I haven't got time and I'm ready for a new deal, and maybe I'm writing a book or whatever, I've always got that money to know, well, if I don't choose to find it myself, then I can use somebody else. So yeah, if there's any kind of train of thought where, oh, I've got to do it all myself because of the learning, honestly, I think, definitely go over and see what Richard has to offer, because I think it's so key and so important. And it also really helps you learn along the way as well. Following somebody who's had so many properties and all the learnings that you've got, you're just basically handing it to them on a plate. It's an amazing opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely, Emma. It's like the difference between starting from a standing start and getting yourself warm and revved up and to try to get the absolute best deal when you've got someone who's already in the market, is already seeing the best deals, that's already got something that could give you the right return on investment. The amount of time you could look and not find, and you can bypass all of that by using a sourcer. I think one time I actually used an external sourcer to find a deal when I needed a deal. So it makes sense. I love the idea that you pay yourself for the deal, because I just cherry pick. I'll see, in a month I'll see a certain number of property deals. Obviously, lots I'll just say no thanks. But then there'll be the ones I work on, and the best one I pick for myself. I've got a ready pool. So it's like dipping that thimble in the sea and taking it from me. And
but the deal stacks, doesn't it? The deal stacks for somebody else. So why wouldn't it stack for you? So you should pay yourself.
I just think that's great. I'm going to take that on board. Thank you. That's really good. I love it. Wisdom.
I love it. Okay, so now my final question. I know we slightly touched on it earlier, but I don't want to lose you before having this one answered, and then we're going to go into our quick fire round. So you have raised a huge amount of money for investing. Now, obviously, you spoke about the letting agent being sources of it, but that is quite a mindset dilemma that some people have, I suppose. I know certainly when I first started out, I was kind of like, who on earth would lend little old me money? How have you managed to, one, get over that mindset, and two, raise such a huge amount of money?
I think there's a couple of answers to this. So my first ever investors were my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And it was a development. I bought a 4-bedroom property, a detached property, from auction, and converted it into 2 luxury flats. And my mum and dad and one of my friends, Eddie, they were my first ever investors. We made a very small profit, but it was great learning. And they came back again and said, they still invest with me. Now they get really great returns, whereas in the early days it was just sort of like trust and keep your fingers crossed that Rich actually does all right. And so yeah, that was the home front. And then gradually, over time, it was people saying, well, that's really good what you're up to. How can we help? How can we get involved? And I was saying, well, you can lend me some money. Yeah, okay. It's difficult with HMOs because you're going to be borrowing money for a long time. So I tend to borrow, I don't borrow the whole amount for buying the property. I will just borrow the deposit and maybe something towards the refurbishment. So let's say it's £200,000 over maybe 2 years. And then we add capital appreciation, we remortgage at the end of the 2 years, pull back the cash, and give it back to the investor with their interest on, which at the moment we're offering about 8 to 10%. We've got a couple of investors we get a better rate, but yeah, that's great. Some of the other investors were, I'd like to do it myself. Well, you give us enough money to do both two properties, and we'll you keep one and I'll keep the other, and that's worked well. And these were people who were friends, business colleagues, and they just liked what I was doing, wanted to hedge their pensions, had some spare cash. Now I'm working on a model whereby rather than actually an investor could be money, they can pledge equity. So I can use their equity in maybe an unencumbered property or even one with a mortgage on, and actually use that money to create a facility, a financial facility, by the use of that equity. So an investor doesn't actually have to put any money in. So there are lots of creative ways that you can actually raise that. It's not daunting if you've got a good deal and you've got a great track record. It's relatively easy. I can go to a business meet or whatever and show people what I'm up to, and they soon get interested, especially when you talk to them about their involvement. Do you want to see it in progress? Do you want to participate? And the interest rates that I can return, you can't get a bank.
Well, that is absolutely beautiful. Right, let's jump straight into our quick fire round.
I'm stuffing myself in.
I've rather oversold it now. No.
Okay.
So firstly, it's 4 questions. 1, who has shaped your property journey the most?
Oh my goodness. Oh dear, oh dear. Just is there a timer on this? Is that a countdown? Do you know what? It's not one particular person. It's most probably a lot of people, actually.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I had an uncle who's long since passed away, but he was a handyman for a letting agency in London. His name was Pop, and I've heard loads of stories about him. I was really small, so he had a bit of an influence. I'm sure that's where it all came from. I got this fascination for property. Then, as I was growing up, it's most probably playing Monopoly. I love playing Monopoly. What do I do now? Little greenhouses, red hotels. I don't know. There was one guy. A long time ago, when I was at school, and he had a number of properties. It was one of my friend's dad, and I was always intrigued. He'd say, "Oh, yeah, Dad's just bought another couple of properties," and I was fascinated by that. So maybe that influenced me. Then people, I don't know. I've met so many people on my journey. Nick, who I wrote the book with in Milton Keynes. Even my wife. She inspires me. I couldn't actually put it down to one person, if I'm honest. It's lots of people. Yeah.
Fantastic. What book has influenced your mindset the most?
Oh, that's got to be Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Wow. That's interesting. That's two interviews in a row that have both quoted that one. Yeah, so it's the starter for so many of us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because if you read that and you get it, I don't need to say any more.
Now, this third one, I feel a bit silly asking it, but it's part of it, so let's go with it. If you could invest in only one type of property, what would it be and why? Answers on a postcard. So check you've been listening.
Yeah, it's HMOs, and I would actually, if if I could have a direction, it's the bigger HMOs now. I think you're doing it with your 8 or 9 bedroom property. I'm seeing a lot of people now taking big buildings on and actually creating these very large HMOs. I think that's most probably going to be my next step, is to maybe get a couple of those back to brick type projects and actually creating something a lot larger. I think I'm fed up with 6 bedrooms now. I want to go bigger.
And you don't have to go back to brick. I mean, mine was an existing HMO, and
really?
and I've sort of not quite doubled the value, but yeah.
I feel a joint venture coming along.
Yay! Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, and final question: what's your non-negotiable morning routine?
That's getting up early.
Okay.
I'm 6 o'clock. I'm working. I have to have an hour where I just sort of get my head around the day. I've got a lot of virtual staff, so setting them up. Bit of meditation, not silly. I don't sort of shout at the sun or anything, but I just have a little bit of quiet time. Just someone was telling me about a book. I can't remember what the book was called, and it was all about having this quiet time. I have to have no noise for a period of time, just so I can focus on nothing. So that's my route. That's non-negotiable. Yeah, I have to have my quiet time in the morning, and obviously a cup of tea.
I love a cup of tea. I love a cup of tea. Yeah, there is something about, isn't there, just being. We're human beings, not human doings, and you must have some time of just being a human being.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's a great one to raise up. Richard, it has been an absolute honor. Thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed that. And what have I taken from today? So I have basically taken that I think it's incredible how you stuck to one thing. And certainly I have been quite a bit of I'll do a bit of this, do a bit of that. But you've absolutely stuck to being an HMO expert. And I think that's really powerful. And through that, from a mindset perspective, you are clearly extremely persistent. You just keep going and going and going. And you have this ability to make everything just seem very simple, which, let's be fair, we know it's not. So thank you so much for your time here, Richard.
Thank you, Emma.
And remember, everyone, that property success isn't just about what you do. It's about how you think. And when you combine a strong strategy with an unstoppable mindset, there's literally no limit to what you can achieve. So do reflect on my conversation with Richard here today and think about what's the one action that I could take from Richard's fantastic advice to move me closer to my property goal. And do remember that if you know somebody who's perhaps struggling at the moment, especially in HMOs, do share this episode, because it could be the real game changer that they need. And remember, the more people that we help, then the greater our own wealth. And that is in every sense of the word. Growing this community means growing the potential that we all have to succeed together. And do remember, your mindset is your greatest property. Keep building it.